The first time I saw Julian, he was a silhouette against the neon glow of Manhattan, his shadow swaying to the rhythm of a city that never slept. My heart, usually steady as the Hudson River, lurched like a subway car hitting a sharp curve. In that moment, I knew I'd spend the rest of my life chasing the feeling he gave me in a single glance. My name is Ethan Carter, a 24-year-old graphic designer scraping by in a cramped Brooklyn apartment. I wasn't looking for love when I wandered into that rooftop bar on a humid July night in 2023. I was there to drown my latest freelance rejection in cheap whiskey and the hum of strangers' conversations. But then Julian appeared, 25. All sharp cheekbones and quiet confidence. A law student with dreams bigger than the skyscrapers around us. He was leaning against the railing, a glass of red wine in hand, staring out at the city like it held all his secrets. I didn't believe in fate, but something about him made me want to. Lost in the skyline, I asked, sliding up beside him, my voice steadier than I felt. He turned, and his hazel eyes caught the light, pinning me in place. Just wondering if it's as free as it looks, he said, his voice low, like he was sharing a secret. That was the start of our first conversation. A dance of words that lasted until the bar closed and the stars faded. We became inseparable after that night. Julian was a paradox. A man who could argue legal theory with professors twice his age but blushed when I teased him about his crooked smile. We spent evenings wandering Central Park, sharing stories under the glow of streetlights. He told me about growing up in a small Connecticut town, where being openly gay wasn't an option. And I confessed how I'd left my own rural Ohio roots to find a place where I could breathe. In New York, we found that place in each other. But there was a shadow over us. Even then, Julian's family was old money, with expectations as rigid as the steel beams holding up the city. His father, prominent attorney, had mapped out Julian's future, a prestigious law firm, a suitable marriage, a life of polished perfection. Julian never spoke of it directly, but I saw the tension in his jaw when his phone buzzed with his father's calls. I ignored the warnings, too caught up in the way his hand brushed mine when we walked, the way his laughter felt like home. Our first kiss happened 3 weeks later, in the pouring rain outside a dive bar in the East Village. We were soaked, laughing, and when he pulled me close, the world fell away. His lips were soft but urgent, like he'd been holding back for years. "Ethan," he whispered against my skin, "you're the only thing that feels real." I believed him. I had to. By fall, we were a secret rhythm in the city's chaos. We'd meet in hidden corners of bookstores, steal moments in quiet cafes, our hands entwined under tables. Julian was cautious, too cautious. I thought sometimes, but I told myself it was because he cared. I didn't question why he never invited me to his apartment or why he'd go silent for days after visiting his family. Love makes you blind, doesn't it? I was so lost in him that I didn't see the cracks forming. One night in October, we lay on a blanket in my tiny apartment, the city's hum filtering through the open window. Julian traced circles on my palm, his voice barely above a whisper. "If I could rewrite my life, Ethan, you'd be every chapter." My heart swelled, but there was a weight in his words I couldn't place. I should have asked more questions, pushed harder, but I was too afraid of breaking what we had. As winter crept in, Julian grew distant. Our meetings became shorter, his texts sporadic. He'd cancel plans with vague excuses, law school deadlines, family obligations. I tried to be understanding, but doubt gnawed at me. Was I just a phase? A rebellion against the life he was meant to live? I confronted him one night in a dimly lit jazz club. The music too loud for subtlety. "Julian, what's going on? Are you pulling away?" His eyes flickered with something guilt. Maybe, but he only squeezed my hand and said, "I'm here, Ethan. I'm trying." I wanted to believe him, but the city felt colder without his warmth. By December, I was clinging to memories of summer nights, replaying every touch, every word, searching for clues. Then, on a snowy evening just before Christmas, he asked me to meet him at our rooftop bar. I arrived hopeful, my heart pounding with the possibility of answers. But when I saw him, his face was a storm of emotions: fear, sorrow, and something final. "Ethan," he said, his voice breaking, "I'm getting married." The words hit like a freight train. My knees buckled, and the city's lights blurred. "Married?" I choked out. "To who?" "Her name's Clara," he said, looking away. "It's arranged. My family's choice." I wanted to scream, to shake him, to demand why he'd let me fall so hard if he knew this was coming. But all I could manage was, "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't know how," he said, tears in his eyes. "I thought I could fight it, but I can't. Not without losing everything." "Everything?" I whispered. "What about me?" He reached for me, but I stepped back. The city roared around us, indifferent to my breaking heart. Julian was slipping away, and I was powerless to stop it. As he walked away into the snow, I stood frozen, the weight of his secret touch lingering like a bruise. The days after Julian's confession were a blur of pain and disbelief. Manhattan, once a canvas of our shared dreams, now felt like a maze of betrayal. I wandered its streets aimlessly, the memory of his voice, "I'm getting married," looping in my mind like a broken record. I tried to hate him. I wanted to erase every moment we'd shared. But love doesn't work that way. Every corner of the city held a ghost of us. The diner where we'd argued over the best pizza. The park bench where he'd first held my hand. I stopped going to our favorite places, but the ache followed me home. My apartment, once a sanctuary, was now a museum of what we'd lost. His scarf still hung on my chair, a cruel reminder of the warmth we'd shared. I threw myself into work, taking on every freelance gig I could find. My designs became darker, sharper, reflecting the storm inside me. My friends noticed. Lila, my best friend since college, cornered me one night at a coffee shop. "Ethan, you look like you're carrying the whole damn city on your shoulders," she said, her brown eyes soft with concern. "Talk to me." I told her everything, the words spilling out like blood from a wound. Julian, our nights together, his engagement. Lila listened, her hand on mine, and when I finished, she hugged me fiercely. "You deserve someone who chooses you, Ethan, not someone who hides you." Her words stung because they were true. Julian had kept me a secret, tucked away like a guilty pleasure. But knowing that didn't make the pain stop. I wanted answers, closure, something to make sense of the hole in my chest. So, against my better judgment, I texted him, "Can we talk? One last time." He agreed to meet me at a small bookstore in Greenwich Village, one of our old haunts. When I saw him, my heart betrayed me, leaping at the sight of his familiar frame. But his eyes were guarded, his smile forced. "Ethan," he said, "I didn't want to hurt you." "Then why did you?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. "You let me believe we had a future." Julian looked down, his fingers tracing the spine of a book. "I thought I could change things. I thought I could be brave enough to choose you. But my family, they've got me in a chokehold. Clara's father is a partner at the firm where I'm interning. Marrying her secures my career, my future." "Your future," I repeated, the word bitter on my tongue. "What about mine?" He flinched, and for a moment, I saw the Julian I loved, the one who'd whispered promises in the dark. "I'm sorry," he said. "I never meant for you to be collateral damage." Collateral damage. The phrase cut deeper than I expected. I wanted to yell, to tell him he was a coward, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I walked away, leaving him standing among the bookshelves, his apology echoing in my ears. The next few weeks were a test of endurance. I avoided social media, knowing I'd see posts about Julian's engagement. But the city was cruel. And one day, I stumbled across an announcement in a local paper: Julian Hart to wed Clara Emerson in spring ceremony. The photo showed them smiling, polished, perfect. I tore the paper to shreds, my hands shaking. Lila dragged me to a support group for queer artists, insisting I needed to feel something other than pain. I went reluctantly, expecting cliches and pity. Instead, I met Sam, a 27-year-old painter with a warm laugh and a knack for listening. He wasn't Julian, his energy was louder, his presence less polished, but he was kind. We talked for hours, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of something other than grief. Sam invited me to an art gallery opening in Chelsea, and I said yes, desperate to escape my own head. The event was vibrant, filled with color and life, and Sam's enthusiasm was contagious. He pointed out paintings with stories woven into every brushstroke, and I found myself smiling, really smiling, for the first time since Julian left. But even as I laughed with Sam, Julian lingered in my thoughts. I wondered if he was happy, if he ever thought of me. The city, with its relentless pulse, seemed to mock my indecision. Could I move on? Did I want to? The questions haunted me as I navigated this new connection with Sam, unsure if I was ready to let go of the past. As spring approached, I heard rumors that Julian's wedding was nearing. The thought of him standing at an altar, promising his life to someone else, was a knife in my gut. I wanted to be angry, to be done. But part of me still loved him. And that was the hardest truth of all. Spring in Manhattan was a cruel tease, blossoms bursting with hope while my heart wrestled with despair. Julian's wedding loomed like a storm cloud, and I was caught in its shadow, torn between letting go and holding on to the ghost of what we'd had. Sam, with his easy smile and endless patience, was a lifeline, but I wasn't sure I deserved one. I started spending more time with Sam, sketching in his tiny Soho studio, where paint-splattered canvases lined the walls. He was open about his own messy breakup with a boyfriend who'd cheated. A journey to self-acceptance that wasn't always pretty. "You don't have to be whole to be enough, Ethan," he said one afternoon, his brush pausing mid-stroke. You just have to keep showing up. His words stuck with me, but showing up was harder than it sounded. Every time I laughed at Sam's jokes or felt a flicker of warmth in his presence, guilt followed. Was I betraying Julian by moving forward? Was I betraying myself by clinging to a love that was never fully mine? The questions gnawed at me, relentless as the city's noise. One evening, Sam convinced me to join him at a queer poetry slam in Harlem. The room was alive with voices raw, angry, hopeful, and for a moment, I felt like I belonged. I even read a piece I'd scribbled in a moment of weakness, about a love that burned bright and left ashes. The crowd's applause was a balm, but when Sam hugged me afterward, his arms felt too safe, too real. Pulled away, mumbling an excuse about needing air. Outside, the city pulsed with life, but I felt like a stranger in it. I walked for hours, ending up at the Hudson River, staring at the water's dark ripples. I thought of Julian, his hazel eyes, his whispered promises, and wondered if he was thinking of me as his wedding day approached. The thought was a poison I couldn't stop drinking. A week later, Lila invited me to a rooftop party in Williamsburg, promising it would lift my spirits. I went, hoping to lose myself in the crowd. But fate, or maybe Manhattan's cruel sense of humor, had other plans. Across the rooftop, I saw him, Julian, in a crisp suit, his arm around a woman with flawless poise. Clara, I assumed. My heart stopped, then raced, a mix of rage and longing tearing through me. I should have left, but my feet carried me toward them. Julian's eyes widened when he saw me, his face paling. Ethan, he said, his voice barely audible over the music. Clara turned, her smile polite but curious, unaware of the history standing between us. Congratulations, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. I hope you're happy. Julian's jaw tightened, and for a moment, I saw the man I'd loved, the one who'd kissed me in the rain, who'd promised me forever. But then Clara touched his arm, and he was gone again, swallowed by the life he'd chosen. I walked away, the city's lights blurring through tears I refused to let fall. Back at my apartment, I called Sam. Can you come over? I asked, my voice raw. He didn't ask questions, just showed up with takeout and a quiet understanding. We sat on my couch, eating in silence, and when he reached for my hand, I didn't pull away. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something honest, something I could hold on to. As Julian's wedding day drew closer, I made a choice. I couldn't keep living in the shadow of his absence. I started painting again, pouring my pain into bold colors and jagged lines. Sam was there, cheering me on, his presence a reminder that I was more than my heartbreak. But the city still whispered Julian's name, and I knew closure wouldn't come easily. One night, I found an old photo of us in my drawer, taken on a whim in Central Park. Julian's smile was unguarded, his arms slung around my shoulders. I stared at it, my chest aching, and made a decision. I needed to see him one last time, not to beg, not to fight, but to say goodbye on my terms. I tracked down the church where his wedding would be held, a grand cathedral in Midtown. The night before the ceremony, I waited outside, my heart pounding. When Julian stepped out, alone, his face lit by the streetlights, I knew this was my last chance to let him go. The air outside the cathedral was thick with the scent of rain. The kind of night that made Manhattan feel both infinite and suffocating. Julian stood under a streetlight. His coat collar turned up against the drizzle. His face a map of conflict. Seeing him there, so close yet so untouchable, tore at the stitches I'd been sewing over my heart. "Ethan," he said, his voice catching as I approached. "What are you doing here?" "I needed to see you," I said, my words steady despite the tremor in my chest. "Not to change your mind, just to understand." He looked away, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. The city hummed around Astaxis honking. Distant sirens, but it felt like we were the only two people in the world. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said finally, "but I don't know how to be the person you need." "You were that person," I said, my voice breaking. "For a while. You were everything." His eyes met mine, and I saw the same pain I carried, mirrored back. "I love you, Ethan," he whispered. "But love isn't enough when the world expects something else." I wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, that love could be enough if he fought for it. But the truth was heavier than my anger. Julian was trapped not just by his family, but by his own fear of losing the life he'd been groomed for. I couldn't save him from that, no matter how much I wanted to. "Then why didn't you let me go sooner?" I asked, my voice raw. "Why let me fall so hard?" "Because I was selfish," he admitted, his voice barely audible. "I thought I could have you and still keep my life intact. I was wrong." The honesty hurt more than any lie could have. I took a step back, needing distance to keep from breaking. "I hope she's worth it," I said, nodding toward the cathedral where he'd pledge his life to Clara tomorrow. "I hope you find what you're looking for." He reached out, his fingers brushing my sleeve, but I pulled away. "Goodbye, Julian," I said, and walked into the rain, letting it wash away the last of my hope. The next few weeks were a slow climb out of the dark. Sam was a constant, his presence steady but never pushy. We started collaborating on a projecta mural for a community center in Brooklyn, blending my graphic designs with his bold paintings. Working together felt like breathing again, each stroke of color a step toward healing. But Julian's wedding day haunted me. I didn't go near the cathedral, but I couldn't escape the city's chatter social media posts, gossip in cafes, all buzzing about the perfect couple. I turned off my phone, locked myself in my apartment, and painted until my hands ached. The canvas became a battlefield, my grief and anger spilling out in jagged lines and vibrant hues. Sam noticed the change in me. One night, as we worked late in his studio, he set down his brush and looked at me. "You're still carrying him, aren't you?" he asked, his voice gentle but direct. I nodded, unable to lie. "It's not about wanting him back. It's about figuring out who I am without him." Sam crossed the room, sitting beside me on the paint-splattered floor. "You're Ethan Carter," he said, his eyes steady. "You're an artist, a dreamer, a guy who loves fiercely even when it hurts. You don't need him to be whole." His words were a lifeline, pulling me toward something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. I leaned against him, my head on his shoulder, and for the first time, I let myself imagine a future without Julian's shadow. But the city wasn't done with me yet. A month after the wedding, I got an email from an unknown address. The subject line was simple: "I'm sorry." My heart raced as I opened it, knowing who it was from before I read a word. Julian's message was short, raw, and devastating. I made a choice, but it wasn't the one my heart wanted. "I'll always love you, Ethan. Be happy." I stared at the screen, tears blurring the words. Part of me wanted to reply, to pour out my anger and pain. But what good would it do? Julian had made his choice, and I had to make mine. I deleted the email, my hands trembling, and closed my laptop. That night, I went to Sam's studio, needing his warmth, his reality. We painted until dawn, our laughter filling the space where my grief had lived. I wasn't healed, not completely, but I was starting to believe I could be. Summer returned to Manhattan, its heat wrapping the city in a haze of possibility. I was different now, not whole, but stronger, piecing myself together with every new day. Sam was a constant in my life, his laughter a melody that drowned out the echoes of Julian's absence. Our mural project was gaining attention, drawing crowds to the community center. It was a vibrant tapestry of color and emotion, a reflection of the journey I'd been on. Strangers stopped to take photos, their voices buzzing with awe. And for the first time, I felt proud of something I'd created. Sam was there through it all, his encouragement a quiet force that pushed me forward. But healing wasn't linear. Some nights, I'd wake up with Julian's name on my lips, the memory of his touch like a phantom limb. I didn't tell Sam about those moments, afraid they'd dim the light growing between us. He deserved better than half of me, but I wasn't sure I could give him more. One afternoon, as we worked on the mural, Sam caught me staring into space. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked, his paintbrush hovering over a canvas. I hesitated, then decided on honesty. "I'm trying to let go of him," I said. "But sometimes, feels like betraying who I was." Sam set down his brush, his eyes soft but steady. "You're not betraying yourself, Ethan. You're growing. That guy you loved, he's part of your story, but he's not the whole book." His words hit hard, rearranging something inside me. I realized I'd been holding on to Julian not because I wanted him back, but because he'd been my first real love that had shaped me. Even as it broke me, letting go didn't mean erasing him. It meant making room for something new. That night, Sam and I went to a rooftop bar, not the one where I'd met Julian, but a new one, with a view of the East River. The air was warm, the city alive with light and sound. We sat close, our knees brushing, and when he leaned in to kiss me, I didn't pull away. His lips were different from Julian's, less hesitant, more certain, but they felt right. I kissed him back, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and hope. The weeks that followed were a blur of new beginnings. Sam and I grew closer, our connection built on shared art and quiet moments. He wasn't a replacement for Julian, was something entirely his own. A light I hadn't expected to find. We spent evenings exploring the city, from hole-in-the-wall taco joints to hidden jazz clubs. Each moment a step away from my past. But Manhattan had a way of pulling at old wounds. One day, while walking through Soho, I saw a familiar figure across the street. Julian, alone, his shoulders slumped. My heart lurched, but I didn't move. He hadn't seen me, and I realized I didn't want him to. For the first time, I felt the weight of his absence lift. Just a little. I told Sam about it later, expecting him to be jealous or cautious. Instead, he listened, his hand on mine. You're allowed to feel it, Ethan, he said. Just don't let it define you. His understanding was a gift I hadn't earned, but I was grateful for it. I started to see myself through his eyes not as a broken heart, but as someone capable of love, of creating beauty from pain. The mural was nearly finished, and with every brushstroke, I felt myself reclaiming a piece of who I was. But the city wasn't done testing me. One evening, as I checked my email, I found another message from Julian. This one was longer, more desperate. I made a mistake. Ethan, I can't stop thinking about you. Can we talk? My breath caught, the words stirring a storm I thought I'd buried. I stared at the screen, my finger hovering over the reply button. Sam was in the next room, humming as he sketched, unaware of the choice I was about to make. Could I face Julian again? Did I owe him that? Or was it time to choose myself and the future I was building with Sam? The email from Julian sat like a weight in my inbox, his words burning into my thoughts. I didn't reply right away. I couldn't. Sam was in my life now, steady and real, and the idea of reopening old wounds felt like a betrayal. But the part of me that still loved Julian, that still remembered his touch, begged for closure. I showed the email to Lila, needing her clarity. We met at our usual coffee shop, the one with mismatched chairs and the smell of burnt espresso. He's married, Ethan, she said, her voice firm but kind. He made his choice. What does talking to him get you? I don't know, I admitted, stirring my coffee until it went cold. Maybe I just need to hear him say it's over. For good. Lila sighed, her eyes searching mine. You're not over him, are you? I'm trying to be, I said. And it was the truth. Sam was helping me rebuild, but Julian's shadow lingered, a question I hadn't fully answered. Against Lila's advice, I agreed to meet Julian at a quiet park in Battery City. It was neutral ground, far from our old haunts. But the moment I saw him, the past rushed back. He looked tired, his hazel eyes dulled by something heavier than exhaustion. Ethan, he said, his voice soft. Thank you for coming. Why now? I asked, keeping my distance. You're married. What's left to say? He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it hurt. Clara and I, it's not what I thought it would be. I thought I could make it work. But every day, I'm lying to her, to myself. I miss you. His words were a punch, stealing my breath. I wanted to scream, to tell him he had no right to miss me after breaking my heart. But I also saw the pain in his eyes, the same pain I'd carried for months. You can't just come back, I said, my voice shaking. You chose her. You chose that life. I know, he said, stepping closer. But I was wrong. I thought I could live without you, but I can't. For a moment, I let myself imagine it running back to him, picking up where we left off. But then I thought of Sam, of the mural, of the person I was becoming. Julian had been my first love, but he wasn't my future. I can't be your secret anymore, I said. I deserve more than that. He nodded, tears in his eyes. I know. I just, I needed you to know I'm sorry, and that I'll always love you. I walked away, my heart heavy but lighter than it had been in months. The city felt different as I left the park, like it was finally letting me go. I went straight to Sam's studio, needing his presence to ground me. When I told him about Julian, he listened without judgment, his hand steady on mine. You did what you needed to, he said. Now what do you want? I looked at him, his paint-streaked face glowing under the studio lights, and felt something shift. I want to keep building this, I said, gesturing to the mural. To us. With you. Sam smiled, pulling me into a hug that felt like home. We spent the rest of the night painting, our brushes moving in sync, creating something beautiful from the chaos of our lives. The mural was almost complete, a testament to resilience, to love that didn't demand perfection. But Julian's words stayed with me, a quiet ache I couldn't fully shake. I knew I'd made the right choice, but the heart doesn't forget so easily. As summer faded into fall, I threw myself into the mural, into Sam, into the life I was choosing. The city, once a backdrop to my pain, was starting to feel like a canvas for something new. One evening, as Sam and I stood back to admire our finished mural, he turned to me. You're not just surviving anymore, Ethan, he said. You're thriving. I looked at the mural, vibrant, bold, a story of loss and rebirth, and realized he was right. Julian had been my first chapter, but I was writing a new one, with Sam, with myself. And for the first time, I believed it could be enough. Fall painted Manhattan in shades of amber and crimson, a season of change that mirrored my own. The mural was unveiled at the community center, drawing a crowd of artists, locals, and curious passers-by. Standing beside Sam, watching people trace their fingers over our work, I felt a pride I hadn't known was possible. This was ours, mine and Sam's story of healing told in color and light. But even as I celebrated, Julian's last words lingered like a song I couldn't forget. I'll always love you. They haunted me in quiet moments, when the city's noise faded and I was left with my thoughts. I didn't want him back, not really, but the memory of him was a thread woven into who I was. Sam sensed it, though I tried to hide it. One night, as we walked through Central Park, the leaves crunching under our feet, he stopped and turned to me. You're still thinking about him, aren't you? He asked, his voice gentle but unafraid. I nodded, guilt twisting in my chest. It's not about wanting him. He was my first love, Sam. That doesn't just disappear. He took my hand, his grip firm. I don't expect it to. I just want you to know there's room for me too. His honesty disarmed me. Sam wasn't asking me to erase my past. He was asking me to make space for him in my present. I squeezed his hand, grateful for his patience, his strength. There's more than room, I said. You're helping me find myself again. We kissed under the glow of a street lamp, the city wrapping us in its embrace. It wasn't the frantic, desperate love I'd had with Julian. It was steadier, deeper, built on trust rather than secrets. With Sam, I didn't have to hide. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. The mural's success led to new opportunities, galleries reaching out, commissions piling up. Sam and I started planning a joint exhibition, a chance to tell our story through art. But the more I leaned into this new life, the more I realized I needed to confront the last piece of my past. I wrote Julian a letter, not an email, but a real letter, the kind you seal and send into the world. I poured everything into it, the love we'd shared, the pain of his choice, the gratitude for what he'd taught me about myself. I didn't ask for a response. I didn't need one. It was my goodbye, written in my own hand, a final step toward letting go. I mailed it from a postbox in Brooklyn, the act feeling like a ritual. As the envelope slipped from my fingers, I felt a weight lift, not all at once, but enough to breathe easier. The city, once a mirror of my grief, was starting to reflect something new: hope, possibility, a future I could shape. Sam and I spent the holidays together, decorating a tiny Christmas tree in my apartment, laughing over burnt cookies and cheap wine. It was simple, messy, perfect. On New Year's Eve, we stood on a rooftop, watching fireworks explode over Manhattan. To new beginnings, Sam said, raising a glass. To us, I added, clinking my glass against his. The city sparkled below, a canvas of light and shadow, and for the first time, I felt like I belonged in it, not as Julian's secret, but as Ethan, whole and enough. But Manhattan always had one last surprise. A week into the new year, I got a package in the mail, no return address. Just a small wooden box. Inside was a note in Julian's handwriting. I'm trying to be brave. Thank you for showing me how. Tucked beside it was a photo of us from that summer, smiling in Central Park. I stared at it, my heart aching but not breaking. Julian was finding his own path, just as I was finding mine. I set the photo on my shelf, not as a shrine, but as a reminder of where I'd been and how far I'd come. The new year stretched before me like a blank canvas, full of promise and uncertainty. Manhattan, with its relentless energy, was no longer a place of pain but a stage for my rebirth. Sam and I were building something real, not just art, but a life together, one brushstroke at a time. Our exhibition opened in a small gallery in Chelsea, a space filled with our shared vision. The walls held our story sharp, graphic lines blending with Sam's vibrant swirls, a testament to two hearts finding harmony in chaos. At the opening, I stood beside him, watching strangers move through our work, their whispers of awe, quiet victory. Lila was there, her grin wide as she hugged me. You did it, Ethan, she said. You turned your pain into something beautiful. She was right. The pain of losing Julian hadn't vanished, but it had transformed, woven into the art that now defined me. Sam's hand found mine, his warmth grounding me, and I realized I was no longer looking back. I was here, now, with him. But the past always finds a way to knock. A month after the exhibition, I saw Julian one last time, not in person, but in a news article. He'd left his law firm, separated from Clara, and was starting over in a new city. The article was brief, but it painted a picture of a man trying to find himself. Just as I had. I felt a pang of sadness, but also relief. Julian was free, in his own way, and so was I. I showed the article to Sam, expecting it to stir old wounds. Instead, he read it quietly, then looked at me. You okay? He asked, his voice steady. Yeah, I said, and I meant it. I'm glad he's finding his way. Sam pulled me close, his arms a safe harbor. You found yours first, he said, and I laughed, the sound lighter than it had been in years. The months that followed were a dance of creation and connection. Sam and I moved in together, our tiny apartment a mess of paint cans and sketchbooks. We fought sometimes over dishes, over deadlines, but we always found our way back to each other. Love with Sam wasn't a wildfire, like it had been with Julian. It was a steady flame, warm and enduring. One night, as we lay in bed, the cities hum a soft lullaby. I turned to him. Thank you, I said, my voice thick with emotion, for seeing me, even when I couldn't see myself. Sam smiled, his fingers tracing my jaw. You're worth seeing, Ethan. Always were. I kissed him, my heart full, and realized that this messy, beautiful life was what I'd been searching for. Julian had been my first love, a secret touch that shaped me. But Sam was my future, my truth. The city, once a witness to my heartbreak, was now a partner in my joy. As spring returned, I stood on our rooftop, looking out at Manhattan's skyline. The lights glittered, endless and alive, just as they had the night I met Julian. But now, they told a different story, one of resilience, of love that didn't hide, of a heart that had learned to heal. I wasn't his secret anymore. I was mine, and I was enough.